Hello, Cleveland, and welcome back to another edition of the Dogland Podcast. I am your host, Jax McCurry. Joining me again tonight on this episode is none other than Katelin Marshall of Crunch Time with Katelin. Katelin, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Jack. We're last preseason game, and we are 13 days away from week one. God, I needed to be here already.
Oh yeah, it's going to be here before we know it. Like this next 13 days are going to go fast, and it's going to be it's good because we are ready for some actual legit Browns football after the preseason, after training camp, after everything. It's just I think we're all ready for it.
Yeah, for real. I just like I said, can it just happen now, please?
For real. Yeah, honestly, I'm ready for it to get here too. But on tonight's episode, we're going to recap final preseason game, and then we are going to talk about the roster moves that have already been made. Tuesday, obviously, is the deadline to cut it down to 53, but the Browns are not wasting any time, much like teams across the league are. The Browns already have it dwindled down into the 60s. And we're going to go through what we know so far and what we might expect going into Tuesday with the final cut downs, if we think there will be any surprises, and we'll talk about all of that. So, Kay, starting with last night's game against Atlanta, we got to see some of the starters before the preseason ended. We knew we were going to see Baker. We just didn't know who else was going to play. The starting offensive line played minus JC Treader. We saw Nick Harris at center. Kareem Hunt played. At wide receiver, we only saw, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Cadero, Hodge. We saw both the tight ends, Njoku and Hooper. So we got to see a good amount of the offense as well as the defense, which we'll get to. But, I thought Baker looked good. I thought, he got in there, played, I think, was it 2 drives, 3 drives, and he looked like he was ready. And, I thought he looked as good as he has throughout his entire run with the Browns. I just thought he was quick, decisive with the offense. He had a couple balls batted, but it just seems like he was locked in and he's ready to go for week 1 against Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, when Stefanski announced that they were playing the starters, and mainly Baker Mayfield, I was just like, why? Because on my podcast, I went through it. I was like, there are multiple teams that aren't even playing their starters at all. Aaron Rodgers isn't playing. At the time, like Josh Allen wasn't playing, but he ended up playing well into the second quarter, I believe. But I was just like, look, you brought back all 11 starters. Why are you doing this? And then it was like the anxiety of, can we just get healthy? Can we get through the game? Can all those guys get through their 2 series? And, yes, you want to see them move the ball, but it's like, can they just stay healthy? And they were able to do that. And, I'm relieved, honestly. And to your point, like, man, Baker Mayfield, he looks fresh. He looks like a really good quarterback in year 2 of a system. And it's something that we just haven't seen yet in his career.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he hasn't been in the same system twice since I think it was the Oklahoma days.
Yeah, I think it was Bob Stoops, like his second year with Bob Stoops. I mean, that's how far it was. I believe it was like his junior year or whatever.
Yeah, he's been through a lot of changes throughout his career, both college and pro. So it's But let's talk about the touchdown pass. That touchdown pass to Cadero Hodge. Cadero's obviously on the bubble. We don't know his fate yet. We kind of have an idea where things are leaning towards him, but Cadero looked like, hey, I'm making my last strong impression. And Baker put the ball right on the money on a rollout to the left. Baker set his feet, planted it, and threw a beautiful ball. And Hodge was able to make a catch over the Falcons defender and was able to tumble into the end zone for the touchdown. And I just thought that if that was Cadero Hodge's parting shot from Cleveland, it was a good one because he's been a solid pro since he came to Cleveland from the Rams. And unfortunately, because of the numbers game, because of the talent at the wide receiver position, it looks like he might be the odd man out. But I thought he made a strong case. Not in just that, but I think he had 2 or 3 catches in those first couple drives with Baker that he really made a strong case to say, hey, do you guys really want to move on from me? I know it was a numbers game, but I've been pretty reliable just as much as some other guys like a Higgins, like maybe even you could say a Jarvis Landry. When Baker has gotten him the ball, Hodge has made the most of it throughout his time with the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, all he does is catch the ball. He's probably the best blocking wide receiver on the team. Just got to think like there's a reason why he won the wide receiver 3 job out of training camp last year. It was him that was active. It was obviously Odell, Jarvis, Cadero, and Jojo Nadsen for the first couple games until he got banged up. I think it was against the Cowboys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it sucks, right? Because you have a player like Hodge who's a really good player, and we're in this weird situation that I don't think we're used to, that we're gonna cut really good players that are gonna produce other places. And he hasn't cut yet. But it's just like the tea leaves, and through some reporting, like I know Brad from the OBR has kind of basically reported that it's just a numbers game at that point. Yeah, it sucks, but you know what? It's not because he didn't do anything wrong. It's just a numbers game, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's unfortunate, but whoever picks up Cadero Hodge, whether it's, I still think there's a shot that he could be traded, because if a team really wants him and they're down in the waiver order, the Browns could say, hey, we'll take a 6th or a 7th round pick for him to make sure that you get your guy. Like, because I think what you get in Cadero Hodge, you're getting a reliable target, which has been evident going back to last year, and you're getting a good guy on special teams, and you're just getting a solid, I think, football player and a solid person. Like, hasn't been anything that speaks to his character. I mean, he was the only wide receiver there for OTAs while everybody else was training. Not to say that was a bad thing that guys were training away from the facility, but Hodge came to prove to the coaching staff, like, hey, I know there's a lot of talent in that wide receiver position, but I'm still here. I'm a solid pro. You've seen what I do on special teams. You've seen what I've done as a wide receiver. Like, I'm going to continue to make my strong case in front of you guys for it. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out, because like we said, he's not cut yet. We'll see. Something might happen, and he might have made a case to make the team, because he only played with Baker last night, and that was it. Yeah. I don't remember seeing him at all the rest of the game. Is there any other takeaways from last night's game that stood out to you? I know Demetric Felton looked great again. Every time he touched the ball, he was making plays.
Dearness Johnson again. Like, yeah. I can't say enough great things about him.
He's another guy on the bubble.
And I just feel like you can't get rid of Dearness Johnson, man. Like, you just can't. The way he catches the ball really well out of the backfield, I think a little more underrated than I think people realize. Just the way he runs so physical. And like, I mean, we saw it in games last year. I mean, there's a reason why, not just the Cowboys game, because it was basically anybody who, took a handoff was running all over him. But remember the Colts game? It was 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 8, and they ran the ball, and he got those 10 yards to keep the clock moving to clinch that win. And they don't do that if they don't believe in him. And I just feel like he's somebody that has to be active and not just on your 53, but also active as one of your 48 players, active each game day.
For sure. Like, I know it's a big numbers game, and like, you're trying to figure out, are you keeping 4 running backs? Where do the fullbacks come into the situation? Where do they see Felton? Do they see him as a wide receiver? Do they see him as a running back? Like, it's going to be so fascinating to see the final 53 and be like, okay, well, they decided this guy was more valuable, or we don't. Like, the fullbacks, I think, are so fascinating between Stanton and Janovich. Like, do they see one of them as a potential tight end or an H-back? Right. Like, it's going to be fascinating. And I feel like there's going to be I think there's going to be a little anger tomorrow out of the fan base, because they're going to be like, why did we cut this guy? He's a good football player. Like, the Browns are in a situation now where they're going to cut a good football player. Some of the fans aren't going to understand it, but we're just in a spot where we have too many good football players. And that's kind of crazy to say, just considering where we've been in the past, but the Browns are a really deep football team. And unfortunately, tough decisions are going to have to be made, and they've already been made. And I think that's just how Andrew Berry and them are going to roll going forward. Like, they can't keep everybody, and it's going to make fans mad. But at the end of the day, like, this is what good football teams unfortunately do.
Yeah. And just think, of the teams that are like top of the waiver wire. Like Dearness Johnson, if he gets waived, you would think a team like the Jets would be a perfect spot for him because they don't really have, running back depth. It's like Talvin, was it Coleman, right?
Yeah.
And their rookie Martin, I
Carter.
believe Carter.
Yeah.
And like so, I think you would rather have Dearness Johnson, who at least has had some carries throughout his career. Think about Cadero Hodge and the 40 or like wait, never mind. I was gonna say the 49ers, but they were like what 12 originally.
Yeah.
So whoever was 3. But it's just like imagine Cadero Hodge on like the 49ers or something if he gets through like 10 or 11 teams. And then people are gonna be pissed, like, oh, well, he's producing. It's like, yeah, we know, like he was going to do good things regardless. He's just a good player. Like it is what it is. It sucks, but it is what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I'm just looking at it real quick. Like I'd say Atlanta could use a wide receiver like
Atlanta,
a Cadero Hodge.
Houston.
Yeah. Houston, Detroit, they need wide receiver help.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, Cadero Hodge gets cut. There's gonna be teams going after him. They need wide receiver help. They're gonna look at a guy like Cadero Hodge. Brashad Perriman got cut today. So there's another wide receiver that'll get picked up. Like there's teams out there that need receiver help. New England, even though they signed a couple, I feel like they could use some more receiver help. It's going to be interesting to see like how's the rest of the league view the players that the Browns are cutting. Like how many guys are going to get picked up because we're so used to we're trying to snatch everybody off their waiver wire, and it's like now we get to see how the roles reverse. Like the Browns are a good team. Like who's going to go after our players? So
I think being able to trade not only dictates where they go, so they don't hurt you, let's just say, but also you get something back for them, that you were just going to cut anyway.
For sure. Anybody on the defensive side of the ball stand out to you outside of Malik McDowell, who continues just to wreak havoc across the defensive front?
Yeah, that was pretty shocking, to be honest with you. Like I knew he was a stud, but for someone who hasn't played any games the last 4 years,
yeah.
I mean, he is, good God, the way he pushed that guy 10 yards downfield at the point of attack. I mean, it was amazing. And man, I'm excited to see him because I believe he made the 53 after last night. I don't know. Like Elijah Lee played pretty well. Like I believe he was starting. Is he somebody over Mac Wilson that you would think makes the team? Because like at the end of that roster, the way you kind of try to break things down is like, well, who's played special teams and who hasn't? And Elijah Lee last year played, I think I saw a tweet that had him at like 150 special team snaps last year. And someone like Mac Wilson only had like 3. And if you're only going to carry 5 linebackers into week 1, you need somebody who could also, obviously play linebacker, but play in multiple facets, which, Elijah Lee does. Who else? Like AJ Green. I thought it was funny that the punt was catching the punt. I don't know if you saw that. But he had a kick catch interference, and because he caught the punt instead of letting the other guy catch it.
I'm sure Prefer chewed him out for that after when they got back to the sideline.
It was just so funny because I've never seen that before. Like he just stole the punt from the punt returner. Like he called for the fair catch, and he just caught it instead of the other guy. But it was funny. Like, but I don't think that ultimately, like, he's gonna make the team as a corner. He played well into the 4th quarter. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I thought Frames was gonna make it as that 4th tight end. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
They seem to target him a lot. He also like ran down after an interception. He ran down and caused a fumble on the return, and the Browns ended up getting the ball back. But I mean, it's just like, I don't really know, to be honest. Like Jordan Elliott played pretty well.
Yeah, I was impressed
like he
with
made
him.
the team. I thought, Porter Gustin was going to make the team, but he ends up getting waived. Maybe that means Joe Jackson, but I didn't really see like a lot from him, or like I seen it in spurts. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember like the game. I didn't really see much, if anything. Like John Johnson played really well, I thought early on, but we expect that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to talk about the defensive starters. I was hoping some of these guys would play, and they did. Like we saw Malik Jackson, we saw Walker, we did see John Johnson.
Ronnie Harrison played,
Ronnie
which I think
Harrison
is a
played,
good
which
thing.
is good. Yeah, to get those guys out there, especially Harrison, because
Yeah,
he spent time on the bikes during camp, so to get him some more reps. It's unfortunate we didn't get to see Grant Delpit at all during the preseason. Um, we saw, I think Newsom played some. I don't. Greedy didn't play Sunday,
no,
so you just hope that Greedy and Delpit are ready, both physically as well as they're ready for whatever's thrown out to them, because they really haven't had a lot of reps in Joe Wood's defense. Obviously, because they did neither one of them
yeah,
played
they were
last
hurt.
year.
Yeah,
So, but it was good to see some of the new guys out there, obviously, to get some playing time, to get some reps in this system and some game action. I was more worried about seeing them than I was seeing the offense, but it was good to see some of the starters out there just to get their feet wet a little bit and for game action. So I think I think everybody will be ready for week one. And
yeah,
looking at
I think so
like
too.
and like seeing Odell in warmups when they were showing the highlights, like people are kind of questioning whether he's going to be ready for week one. I think he's going to be ready because he looks like Odell. Like,
Yeah,
like what
definitely.
we expect Odell Beckham to be for week one. So it's going to be interesting to see come week one against Kansas City. Let's get to the roster cuts because the Browns aren't wasting any time. Okay. When
No,
it
and
comes
I'm
to this.
glad. And
And
I'm
I'm
glad.
glad too. I'm glad they're just like, we know who this team's going to be. We're just going to start making these moves happen. Um, let's go. Let's just try to do this position wise. We'll just go down the board. Let's start at quarterback. Kyle Loletta. We kind of there was the debate back and forth amongst fans. Was it going to be Case Keenum? Was it going to be Kyle Loletta for the backup quarterback? I always tended to think it would be Keenum, but Loletta had a good showing the first couple preseason games. Last night he did okay. The stats won't tell the full story, but I thought he had a good preseason. He gets cut, and the reports are already out. He's not even going to re-sign with the Browns on the practice squad. He's going to move on, which is fine. I feel like he's going to try to go prove himself elsewhere. I thought he had a good showing in camp, but obviously the Browns were going to roll with Case Keenum, so not a surprise that he's obviously going to walk away.
No, not at all. I mean, I never really bought into the let's trade Case Keenum, thought process, just because like, yeah, if Baker gets hurt and is out for the year, you're screwed anyway. But it's the whole point of having a quality backup is for the weeks where Baker's out for like 2 or 3 games, and that's when you have someone like Case Keenum who could just right the ship and keep it afloat for a couple weeks until your guy comes back.
Yeah. Wide receiver, not a surprise. Jojo Nadsen gets cut.
No,
He did show some flashes again that he still has that speed and can be utilized. But the fact that they have Anthony Schwartz, the fact that they have Demetric Felton back there in the return game, Nadsen wasn't going to make it. And it was just simply the numbers game, just like we talk about with Cadero Hodge. He'll latch on somewhere, I think. He's got that speed. He can help in the return game. Showed it in Los Angeles with the Rams. So he'll definitely get picked up elsewhere.
yeah, definitely. And to think again, last year he was playing a significant amount of snaps before he got hurt. They were calling end arounds for him. They were, trying to get the ball deep to him. It sucks, but like you said, it's a numbers game.
Without a doubt. Offensive tackle. This actually just went down right before we started recording. Greg Sinnat, who I thought was going to make the team as a reserve tackle and was probably going to be the second man up in terms of tackles behind Chris Hubbard, but because I don't think James Hudson is close to being ready to see live game action. But Sinnat's going on injured reserve, which is unfortunate because he was the highest graded Browns offensive player according to Pro Football Focus in the preseason. And he's definitely showing some promise. The Browns had him on the practice squad last year, brought him back during the offseason. So I feel like Callahan likes him a lot. And it'd be interesting to see, do they keep him on injured reserve all year, or do they end up cutting him much like they did with a Cody Parkey or somebody else and try to let him latch on somewhere? Or do they have a long-term plan for him to, I don't know, potentially replace Jack Conklin after 2022 or 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure if he was going to make it like initially, but the fact that he was part of their practice squad last year, they obviously liked him, and it was just one of those things where the Cowboys were, their offensive line was so banged up that they had to pick him up, and I think it's one of those things where it ends up being a probably a blessing in disguise for him. Like, he ends up staying around the team for the year, and like you said, he could potentially be your future right tackle going forward.
This room was the most surprising to me, the edge room. We saw 3 guys that get let go today: Curtis Weaver, Porter Gustin, and Cameron Malveaux. So right now, theoretically, Joe Jackson's going to be your edge 4, but this could be a scenario where the Browns are seeing someone getting cut. They know someone's going to get cut across the league, and they feel like they have a good chance, even though they're low in the waiver order, where they might be able to get another quality backup edge, reserve edge, or there could be a trade. And they, but Joe Jackson, he did just enough, I think, during the preseason, and you never really saw Porter Gustin do too much in the preseason. Malveaux had some flashes. Curtis Weaver never showed anything, and I think that was the most disappointing because there was a lot of attention around his name going back to last year when the Browns picked him up from Miami. But the edge room is looking quite interesting going into tomorrow's deadline.
Yeah, and it could be one of those things where maybe Joe Jackson does end up getting cut and they end up scouring the waiver wire for that 4th end. Or, one thing to take away from last night's game, the defensive tackle was playing edge, well into that 4th quarter. So, having versatile defensive linemen, and I think that's something that they need to do. Another weird thing, they still haven't put Jacob Phillips on IR. Tony Fields has been out since rookie camp. He hasn't been put on IR. And I think the whole defensive end thing, and my thought process is, I think they're just trying to get like guys like Phillips and Fields to the 53 and then IR them, and then kind of see if maybe a Porter Gustin is still available to then re-sign him and bring him back. Just because it's weird, right? At 4:00 tomorrow, that 53 isn't going to be the 53. You know what I mean? They're going to add some players. They're going to put players on IR. And because of that, like the whole IR, they're eligible to return. If they put them on IR now, they're out for the year, or they have to be cut. So guys like, like I said, Jacob Phillips, Tony Fields. We don't know the injury with Rashard Higgins. Maybe he ends up on the short-term IR. He's out for 3 weeks. And maybe that ends up they keep Hodge because of that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it'll be interesting. But I think that's my thought process with a lot of these cuts. It's like they're just trying to get to 53, put a couple people on IR, and then open up some roster spots to then either bring other people back or obviously claim people.
Yeah, that is true. I keep forgetting about that because, like you said, Phillips hasn't gone on IR yet. And although I don't know, I feel like if he comes back, it'll be towards the end of the season. But the Browns must have some hope that he'll be able to come back and be a contributor at some point this season, to the point where they did not put him on season-ending IR. Same with Tony Fields. But I have a feeling they might end up putting him on IR and just stashing him away for a year, because if they do cut him, I have a feeling someone will probably pick him up. Because if you watch his West Virginia tape, there was flashes there of potential. And much like Curtis Weaver, when he got cut by Miami, there could be a team waiting in the weeds like the Browns were a year ago and looking to pick up Tony Fields and trying to stash him away themselves. So that's going to be something, because the Browns might have like 6 or 7 linebackers on the initial 53 tomorrow, and everybody's going to be like, what are they doing? But there's obviously a method to Andrew Berry's madness.
Yeah, and going back to defensive line too, like, they cut all these edge. Well, they also have like 6 defensive tackles that, they are obviously interested in keeping. Obviously, Malik Jackson, I would think Sheldon Day did enough to make this team and to be your de facto, number 2 defensive tackle starter. We said McDowell. Jordan Elliott has only produced this preseason, which is nice to see. You spent a 4th-round pick on Tommy Togiai. So
Andrew Billings is still
Andrew
there too.
Billings is a question mark, even though I didn't see anything that really shows that he deserves a spot. And the fact that you're already paying him, like he's already part of your cap for this year, so I don't really feel like it matters. But yeah, I just defensive line is getting interesting, I think.
Yeah, I have a feeling the Browns are gonna be busy on that spot because
I think
defensive
so
tackle just doesn't seem like it's finished, and I feel like there's got to be a move up Andrew Berry's sleeve to improve that, or to improve on the edge, because you have the ability to kick Clowney inside.
Yep.
And he's arguably, stats say he's more effective as a defensive tackle within an edge, which is kind of surprising just because of what he's done throughout his career. But I feel like that's something to definitely keep an eye on. I just lost my notes. Hold on. Linebacker. We cut to Grace Scales, who we picked up last week. He obviously didn't show too much. This obviously it's just a numbers game. Willie Harvey Jr., who they picked up right after the Phillips injury, he got cut, and that was it at linebacker. We have a good feeling of how the linebacker room is going to shake out. Obviously, it's going to come down to Elijah Lee and I think Mac Wilson for the initial 53. Me and Alex, we did one on the top dogs, and it came down to that. And like you said, Elijah Lee's got he's more effective on special teams than Mac. And honestly, I think if it does come down to that, as much as people like Mac Wilson and the flashes he has shown in preseason and camp, I would give the nod to Elijah Lee, just because I feel like he can be more effective in special teams. And I thought he played well in the preseason when he was out there at linebacker. So it's going to be interesting. And all the little fanboys and fangirls are going to get hurt if 51 gets cut tomorrow.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting moment when he gets cut. It'll be interesting to see if we see any Mac Wilson love letters for his goodbye when he gets cut. and I'll leave it at that.
Right. I missed tight end. Jordan Franks got cut. You mentioned him earlier. This guy we thought might make it, and Kyle Markaway, who they just brought back a couple of days ago. Both of them got cut. So there's only 3 tight ends. Correct me if I'm wrong right now on the roster.
Nope, that's it.
So what do they do? Does Johnny Stanton, does Andy Janovich, are they both going to make it? And one of them's going to be that tight end, like H-back role like that. That's going to be one of those interesting things. Me and Alex had both of them make the roster, making our 53-man roster. So it's
okay.
Yeah, we had Stan, I think, as the tight end, and Janovich as the fullback. So it's going to be interesting. Maybe they pick up a tight end on the waiver wire or something. Maybe they got a trade where they bring one in. Going to be fascinating for that spot as well. But
the whole Franks thing, I just thought he was going to make it because they had 4 tight ends all of last year and a fullback. Steve Carlson maybe wasn't active every game, but he was a part of this team. And even before he got hurt, like, I would have thought he was part of this, their future. Yes, he only caught 1 pass, but he plays special teams. He's a good blocker. And the other thing too, and I was listening to the Jake Burns podcast from yesterday in their Twitch stream. Like, they only had, I think he said fullback plays like 5% of the time last year, or like an average of 5 plays last year with the fullback. So it'll be interesting. That's why I thought maybe someone like Johnny Stanton would make it, because he can play tight end, he could play fullback, play that H-back. He even got a couple carries last night. Shades of Peyton Hillis running the ball with that number 40. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. But the other thing is, with Janovich, right? He's one of those guys, along with Malcolm Smith, what they can cut, and because they're veterans, they're not subject to waivers. So they could potentially cut those players and then bring them back, like they did with Greg Robinson a couple years ago.
Yeah,
when he was your starting left tackle, and you just cut him until you get to your 53 and then, you sign them back, and it's just all like again, how to work around the whole 53-man roster thing.
Yeah, that is something to keep an eye on for sure. And because they're both on like the minimum, so it's not going to hurt us in the cap if we do end up cutting them and bringing them back. Yeah, it's gonna be something fascinating to watch. It's everybody's gonna freak out tomorrow, and it's just gonna be like, I'm just gonna sit back and be like, let Barry work his magic, and we'll criticize anything that we want to question later on. Defensive backfield. Sheldrick Redwine got cut. That was not a surprise to me. Javante Moffitt. Obviously, it's just the numbers game with the safety room. Because when you have Harrison,
I thought Moffitt was gonna make it though. I thought he was gonna be your fifth safety. Somebody who can be an insurance policy for Grant Delpit, because again, he's obviously someone you just don't know,
right?
Health wise, and the fact that they liked him a lot. He was part of the roster throughout the year last year. He played a ton of special teams last year, and I just thought that was like, maybe he wasn't a quote unquote lock, but I thought like he was somebody who, like, I would have been really surprised, but maybe they think, they can grab another safety, through the waiver wire type thing, where, somebody who may not make another team that, they liked or whatever, but it was just interesting.
Yeah, I feel like they know, or at least have a good feeling that he might slide off waivers and get him back on the practice squad.
Yeah, I think so too. Even Sheldrick Redwine too. Like, he's somebody that knows the system, and there's already was talk that, like, they hope that they can get him back.
Yeah, I feel like both of them, because it's a 16-man practice squad, so maybe both. They both know, like you said, they both know the system. They've been around Cleveland. They know the ins and outs of the team and the town. I'm sure they might not be leaving town right away. Like, I feel like they're gonna sit tight for at least 24 more hours and just kind of see how it all shakes out. But Elijah Benton also got cut. He was another safety. Brian Allen, the corner, he got cut, and Emmanuel Rugamba, who's also a corner. So they trimmed the corner room a little bit. I think it's MJ Stewart. I think is a surprise to some people that he's still on, but I feel like he might be that hybrid. Like, he's going to be like the last corner and the last safety in the room, because they've been cross training him at both throughout training camp and the preseason. So,
and again, he played a ton of special teams last year. Like, that's the bottom of this roster. It's, have you played special teams? And if you did, then you're probably part of this team.
Yep. Because as it stands right now, there's 6 corners: Ward, Williams, Hill, Newsome, Green, and Stewart. And then there's 5 safeties: Johnson, Harrison, Delpit, and LeCount. And then you might as well throw Stewart in there too. So there's your 11 DBs. And I feel like that's going to probably be it. They might add another one and might move Stewart, but I kind of feel confident that room's set going into 2021.
Yep.
So going into tomorrow, what are you going to be looking at specifically when it comes to this roster?
I'm interested to see, like, the offensive line, like the backups. Obviously, like, Chris Hubbard is somebody who we all really like, especially in the right backup, right tackle, right guard role, because he played it really well last year. But it's also what, $4.5 million is pretty steep for a backup.
I feel like he's safe though.
But I thought so too. But he could be somebody, like, if the Colts come calling and go, like, here's a conditional 4th round pick, and because we obviously need help at offensive line, you maybe
especially
take that. Yeah, especially at tackle. Michael Dunn, he's been banged up, but they really like him. I don't know if you would subject him to waivers initially. Maybe he's somebody who makes the 53, and then you end up IRing him, and for whenever he's able to come back. Same thing, Blake Hands is a guy. Going back to last night's game, I thought it was very telling that Nick Harris was the center behind, or in front of Baker Mayfield. Because I think we talked about it I don't know if it was on this podcast or the Top Dogs podcast, but it was like he didn't really play well at guard
Right.
last year, and he's a little undersized, so he doesn't really have that versatility initially that you would like, an offensive lineman to have, especially like a backup. But I think he makes the roster because, they obviously like him enough to say, all right, you're going to start with the rest of the starters. And he was the main guy, he's under center, for Baker Mayfield. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, they must think extremely highly of him to do that. And I also thought Blake Hans playing into the third and fourth quarter was interesting. And I think I'm sorry, I'm just kind of like
No, you're good.
It's like because all my thoughts are going in, like are happening at the same time.
Like, quick question real quick. Did Hans play? What did he play? Was he the center behind after Harris went out, or was he playing?
I think he was playing left guard.
Okay, well that is interesting then, because
yeah,
he played center against the Giants, and I thought he did well. But the fact that he was playing guard, now granted, Michael Dunn was out.
Yep.
And I'm assuming Javon Patterson was the center because
Patterson was the center.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's gonna be interesting because Forbes got hurt with a knee, so I'm wondering if they're gonna IR him. They didn't give any clarity on that knee injury today. So yeah, I'm with you though. The backup offensive line is gonna be something to watch because with Sinnat going on IR, Hubbard's safe in my opinion. Like, we need a backup tackle.
Yeah.
So yeah, the interior is gonna be fascinating to watch.
And they tried Hudson at right tackle. They had him switched off. They had Hubbard at left tackle and Hudson at right tackle. And it's just one of those things, like they were saying, he's already a young prospect at left tackle anyway. He's only played 2 years at left tackle at Cincinnati. And he looks all right at left tackle. You could see where, there's a lot of promise there, but to be that swing tackle, I don't think they could do it. And I think last night showed that even against second and third string defensive ends for the Falcons, he was kind of getting, it was tough at times for him. Just the footwork just wasn't there. And, it's just, to be that swing tackle, you got to be able to, be ambidextrous really in your footwork. So that's why I think, like you said, Hubbard would be somebody, like I said, unless they get a crazy trade offer. But then it's like, do you want to risk that? Like, because he was your main sub last year. Conklin was a little banged up last year. Wyatt Teller, we love Wyatt Teller, but he only played 11, 12 games last year. It's a significant having that backup linebacker room or lineman room, which is why I'm very curious to see how many they keep for each game. So
yeah, certainly, because like the way I see it right now, Hudson's making it. I think Dunn's making it because I think he's got a spot on this team next year, whether he's replacing Bitonio or Teller. I didn't have Nick Harris making my 53, shockingly, but the fact that he was the starting center last night, maybe I'm going to rechange my stance on that. It's clear that they think somewhat highly of him if he was first man up to go center with the rest of the starting offensive line. I would have Hubbard and I would have Hans. Now, and I mean, right there's 10. There's 10 offensive linemen. Maybe they keep. Did they keep?
I thought
guys?
9. I would have thought that was my thought, was you keep Hudson, Hubbard, Michael Dunn, but again, the whole IR thing, and then Harris. But then, if Dunn's out, then you have like somebody like Blake Hans, or maybe you just find somebody that you like, a veteran interior guard, and you're only going to activate 48 guys each game anyway, and not all 9 or 10 offensive linemen are going to be active. So I think having 8 active with Hudson as your reserve each week to redshirt him each week to redshirt him this year so he's comfortable next year. I think that's the way to go, in my opinion. I think 9 is about right, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I don't fault that at all, because even if you say, like, if Dunn goes maybe on short-term IR or they IR him for the year, I mean, you have Blake Hance, who's shown he could play guard and center. Hubbard, who's shown he could play tackle and guard. I mean, you have two versatile guys right there. Maybe they keep a Colby Gossett or a Javon Patterson just to be an extra lineman. I mean, it is going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out tomorrow. And Kay, you want to go ahead and tell them what we got planned for Wednesday, the next time we sit down to record?
Yeah, we are going to break down the 53, the official 53. And I think it's a good thing to kind of wait a day because, you know, by Wednesday, we'll see who gets picked up. We'll see like, well, there's, you know, a hole at line, you know, at one of the lines places, wide receiver, whoever, whatever. But yeah, we're going to sit down, on Crunch Time with Katelin, right? Is that the plan? Or the dog
crossover.
Yeah, crossover episode.
Crunch Time. I already dubbed it Crunch Time in the Dogland.
I like it. I love it. Right. Let's do it. So
all right. Yeah.
Be sure to check that out.
So yeah, days. If you listen to Crunch Time with Katelin or the Dogland, we will have both. The episode will be on both news on audio feed. So if you listen to Crunch Time with Katelin, you'll be hearing the Dogland, or vice versa. You hear the Dogland, you'll be hearing Crunch Time with Katelin. So it's a special crossover episode that we got coming out Wednesday. So definitely stay tuned for that. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Jack McCurry08. You can follow Katelin at Katelin Knows CLE. That's KATELIN KNOWSCLE. You guys can follow the Dogland at the Dogland on Twitter as well as Facebook. And until next time, go Browns.